Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show to talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Bulgasal episode 8. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So immediately picking up where the last episode left off, obviously we get a little bit of more alone time between Sungon and Hual. And obviously she's asking him questions like, oh, I don't want to be the only one eating, but he can eat. It's just he can't taste anything. And, she's asking him questions like, cool, like, after you become human again, he's like, oh, what are you going to do afterwards? Like, he's like, are you going to talk about what am I going to do with you? She's like, no. I'd rather not know because that's terrifying, but I want to know what you plan to do. He's like, I plan to die. He's lived for 600 years and that's a lonely existence. And to be able to finally die, be free of all of this, maybe thinking and hoping that maybe if he dies, he might be reincarnated with his family. He's run into them in this life. Maybe he'll be fortunate enough to be reincarnated and meet them in a different life later on down the road. That might be part of his mind. Or maybe it's just simply, I just want to die. I just want this nightmare to be over. This nightmare I've been living for such a long time. I mean, obviously this predates even becoming Bulgasal. Like, he's obviously been tied to all of this since the day he was born, even before he was born. So... But it is a thing that I thought was interesting because Sungon ends up apologizing to him. And he's like, whoa, like, you're trying to get me sympathetic and empathetic towards you. It's not going to work. She's like, no, like, I know me saying sorry doesn't take away all that I've done, but I still want to say sorry. Sorry to you and to everyone I've ever hurt in my past lives. So, and that's the thing, like, he has an issue with it later on, but the problem is because it started to affect him, he started to... feel sorry for her. I mean, that's why he gave her, like, the piggyback ride, because he's starting to see too much of her as human rather than a monster, the person he's loathed for so long. Because, once again, it's easy to hate someone when they're so far away from you. I mean, he still hates her, like, up close and personal, but he spent more time with her, as I brought up in the previous episode. He's never spent this much time with any version of her. Even the Bulgasal he knew all those years ago, he had small interactions with her. He never really got to know her. He got to know Sungon, and that makes it different. It's easier to hate someone when they're far away, out of sight, always on your mind, but out of sight. So he hasn't seen her for the past 600 years, and so... it makes it almost easier for her to kind of sway him a little bit more. I mean, he's not the only one. Miss Lee is getting swayed. Even Do-yoon, who both look at her as like, no, we know what you are. Do-yoon looks at her the way she does because Yote says like, oh, like she's a monster, don't trust her. Then you have Miss Lee, who knows about Sungon through everything that Hual's been through. So... it's just interesting that different Bulgasals have told them about what kind of monster she is. So I think that's interesting. But even they're like, man, we shouldn't get too swayed by it. But like spending enough time with her, even Miss Lee, like who's kind of awkward around her, is kind of like, oh, right. It's like, oh, like she says like, oh, because she was talking about like Siho. Sungon said that Siho really looked up to her and really liked her a lot. And she's like, yeah, I must be like what, people call like, I'm like somewhat girl crush material. She's like, I was born in the wrong generation. I love that. But even she's letting her guard down. And even Do-yoon, who had like a splinter, I thought it didn't go there, but I thought she was going to try and suck the blood out of his finger just to help with it. And he was going to freak out about it. I think that's why he was a little like, no, you don't have to help me because it's something related to blood. But she pulled the splinter out and she's so nice. And obviously from Miss Lee's point of view, when he's like, oh, maybe we shouldn't trust, because she's thinking like, oh, he must know, like, because Hual doesn't like her. Like, that's the only reason. Like, no, he has other reasons for not trusting her. So I just thought that was interesting. But she did have another prophecy this episode. The moment they got back, obviously you see all the stuff they bought. There's a big screen TV. It's like they went buck wild. And, but yeah, she had another prophecy. And she says, like, right, the one who's forgotten everything. The moment they remember, everyone here is going to die. So the question then becomes, wait, the entire episode makes you think, okay, it has to be Sungon, right? Even she's starting to believe that. But if that's the case, like, now other elements in the episode make you go, maybe it's not her that it shouldn't, like, you should be scared of her remembering everything. Maybe the person you should be worried about is Oyote. I don't know. Like, because this episode brought a lot of stuff into question. Obviously, Detective Kwan was doing a lot of investigating on his own, which Hawal was like, why are you doing that? You're being reckless. Don't do that. And he's like, why are you he's like getting super protective about it, which obviously Sungyeon, she doesn't know their connections, but she's like, right, please don't investigate this on your own. She's concerned. It's like, right, like all you've done for us, I don't want you getting hurt in the process. Because even when he talks to Hawal, he doesn't tell Hawal the truth. He tells him some of the story about like, right, which we've gotten pieces of the suspect who admitted to all the murders and stuff like that. Now in retrospect, it's like, oh, Ayote must have like told him like all the ins and outs of the case. We still don't know why the guy confessed. I don't know what someone that like Darkhold had like, you know, like use fear tactics to scare him into confessing. Did he say like, hey, you confess to this, I'll make sure your family's taken care of type of thing? Who knows why the guy decided to confess to all of it. But Kwan couldn't let it go, so he kept pushing in interrogation, and the guy killed himself. We know that. But it turns out things run a little deeper, because it turns out the detective he was working the case with, she, sometime after the fact, after he got like punished for the whole situation, sometime afterwards, she went to the house that the suspect that killed himself, his house, went to his house and killed herself, hung herself. And immediately, like, I didn't even recognize it at first, but when Hawal looked at the picture, he's like, yo, is this her husband? And it's like, yeah. I was like, oh my god, is he going to be a monster or something? I'm like, are we going to have more monsters? More monsters having kids like last episode, but it turns out it wasn't until he started reliving the past and thinking about his dad, I was like, oh, I was like, I knew it! From the very beginning, I was like, he's got to eventually run into his dad. Maybe his mom, too. To be fair, I don't know if there was any pictures of him to recognize his mom, but he would recognize his dad. He was old enough when his dad left to remember his face, because it's been burned into his memories. That was interesting, too, because like, he opened up to... which is so interesting. He opened up, obviously not telling him everything, but he opened up to Kwan about his past. Of like, it's like, because it's like, yeah, I love everyone's like, oh, it's like, oh, is your mother okay? He's like, yeah, sure. Like, it's like, yeah, you could be like, she's not necessarily. It's easier just to be like, yeah, she's my mom, because he never wanted to tell Kwan the truth about him being Bulgasal, because he knew he has his issues with Bulgasal. But regardless, so, but I love that it's like, oh, what about your dad? It's like, my dad left me years ago. My stepfather, he's like, I didn't deserve him, but he looked after me. He raised me, you know? I mean, and, you know, it's so sad. He's saying all this in front of his father, not being able to tell him, like, I'm talking about you, you know? But he ends up tracking down his dad, and his dad's a bit of, even in this reality, his dad's in this reincarnation, his dad's a drunk too, and it's like, sadly, tragedy followed him here. And Hawal, despite everything, helped his dad find his way back home, and you're like, wow, I thought you'd be a little more pissy towards this, but you're helping him out. He's like, no, let me get you home. Because despite everything, it's like, you still are my dad. I understand why you left. I don't agree with why you left. I hate that you left, but I understand. And he actually had a heart-to-heart with his dad. No, not a heart-to-heart, but he was able to say all the things. He's like, you abandoned me. Like, you sold me for liquor. The fact of the matter is, I was living in that house alone, empty house, dreaming and hoping, like, if Bulgasal doesn't kill me, that you'd actually come back. He's like, I hated you, but also at the same time, there was a part of me that wanted you to be happy. And it's like, that's the sad, conflicted thing of, like, that's why he was looking after him at this point, because it's like, right, like, despite everything, I wanted, like, there to be a life that you were happy, to find out, like, oh, and to find out that sadness found its way to you again, which I'm sure Hawal immediately took it upon himself to be like, right, everyone's drawn into my karma, everyone's caught up in some tragedy one way or another, and it's in some shape or form, it's because of me. So he felt bad, but the sad thing is, his dad is not the best father in this reality. Once again, he lost his wife, but he's taking that all out on his son. And that's the thing too, like, Hawal felt a kinship with his pseudo brother, where it's like, right, like, even if it's the same thing, it's literally the same thing. Their respective moms died, and he lashed out at them. It's like history sadly repeating itself. And he's drinking all the time. He's very abusive towards his son. He's a drunk. And Hawal called him out for it. And I'm hoping in the long run that, like, he'll, in his drunken haze, like, some of what Hawal said probably wouldn't register to him. I doubt he'll remember everything. Not only like, oh, I won't remember my past lives, but I also won't remember a lot of that conversation. But hopefully enough of it will stick that he will be a better father. Because it's like, yeah, you weren't the only one that lost your wife. Like, and oh, you're like, oh, I got stuck with my son. It's like, he got stuck with an abusive drunk of a father. Like, so hopefully there can be some remedy to that. Like, maybe this encounter fixed things for the better, but it is just sad to see history repeating itself. And obviously it made him go back to Sung-un, who was actually waiting for him, because she made an excuse like, no, I want to talk to you about the prophecy. It's like, no, she actually just wanted to talk to him. And, well, I think partially, but I think it's also because she actually started feeling things towards him in some shape or form. Because the sad thing is, this whole learning more, but well, for one, she had that memory of like her previous self from 50 years ago who died, dragging her back into the hole and being like, right, the moment you remember like all the people around you going to die, which immediately I'm like, is that what happened to her? She remembered everything, like gained all her memories back, and that's why, like, I was like, it's fate/destiny. It's a curse on her too, where no matter what, some circumstances are always going to lead to the death of the people around you because you get back all your memories. Like, it's a curse placed upon you, just like it's a curse placed on, like it was a curse placed upon Hual. That's what I'm curious about. You don't think it's going to be something complicated, like in a past life or something, that Sung-un, before becoming a Bulgasal, was his mother, so like that's why the curse kind of, like, she was a Bulgasal, but why he ended up getting cursed is because she herself was cursed, and that kind of, like, Hual was actually her son. Like, you don't think that's the direction they're gonna go? I don't think so. Like, you don't know with this reincarnation stuff. It's wild, so there's no telling like how it all play out, how things get revealed, because like there's so many twists and turns to these reveals that I'm like, I don't 100% know how it's all gonna shape out and play out. But circling back to it, the point I was bringing up is like Siho was going to be like, she talks about Miss Lee and like, oh, I saw her previous life. She must have had like some powers or something, because when I touched her, her younger self talked to me, and it's like, oh, I can. It's like, oh, you can see past life. She's like, I can touch you, and she's like, no, like, not let you want to see me when I got my first kiss. Is that what you want? And she's like, ew, gross, no, because she was joking. But it was her way to deflect, because she's scared of like, cool, if I see those memories, I don't want you to see that side of me, sis. Like, I don't want you to see me like the evil person I potentially was, because she doesn't like this, because I said the only way she would be able to find out the truth about a lot of that is if she regained her memories. But it's like, oh, Siho's there, but Siho tapping into those memories might end up unlodging something. So that's something you have to kind of be a little careful about too. So I think so. Especially because it's not like a one-for-one. Like, it's not like I peer into it. Because when she peers into the memories/soul peers back. So that could definitely be an issue with the way her powers work. Because it's not like a one-way street. It's actually a two-way street, in fact. So, but she also learned from Hual about, like, because Siho had got a glimpse of one of her previous lives, and that was the life as the shaman from the village. And so she, Sung-un talks to Hual about it, and he's like, right, that shaman from my village was her. So it's like, right, her prophecies come true, so obviously she might have been talking about me. So Hual was like, don't worry about it, I'll find another way. But the moment he got back, he was so upset about the whole situation with his dad that he blamed her, which he's like, for a second, when I look at you, when you make faces like that, I almost mistake you for human, but I remember what you are. You are the monster that causes me pain. You've taken everything from me, and even now, like, all of this, Yote wasn't the source of all this. You were. You started all this pain, and now the people I care about are constantly driven into. My dad could at least have been in this new life a happier, better dad, but like the karma that's kind of got us all dragged into this because of you, so many people are suffering in this life. So, especially now that he knows, like, right, if you remember everything, everyone here could end up dying, which even Sung-un felt bad about, because the moment she came downstairs, she saw Do-yeon, Siho, and Miss Lee all together having fun, then bouncing off of each other in the sense of like just kind of this family that they've kind of formed, and she's scared of like being responsible for taking all that away. So she opens up to Siho about everything of like, right, I was Bulgasal in a previous life. I killed him and his family, and I made him Bulgasal. It's like, our sister Sung-young like had memories of it, but I didn't. But then like for Siho, it's like, you're wrong. Because you saying you're evil, well, if you were the Bulgasal and you're saying that you have Hual's soul, but you split it in two because you guys are twins, you're saying that Sung Yeon was evil, and it's like, no, I don't believe that, you know? So, Sung-gon goes off to get answers of her own, so she goes and talks to, their grandmother, her sister from her previous life, and pretends to be her sister, being like, hey, Gobu, I'm here, I'm so sorry. And it's like, I'm sorry I ran away. It's like, no, we should have ran away when you came to us. And it's like, wait, I tried to tell you guys to run away. It's like, yes, we didn't believe you. And then that man showed up. And then she gets context to Dark Hole is the one controlling you. He made, or at the very least, he faked it and made it seem like it was you who killed his wife and son, when in actuality, it was him. So that's why I'm like, is Yute the one that doesn't have all his memories? Does he think he has all of them, but the moment he regains them, he truly becomes a monster, or what? Or is this still about Sung-gun? Like, who knows? There's just so many factors to this situation. But it's like, it feeds into like something I brought up, like maybe in like the first or second, like probably even in the first episode. I thought it was always weird that her eyes were glowing red, like she was being controlled. But I'm like, we've never circled back to it, so not unless that's going to be a late plot point. But it seemed like she might have been like controlled, because she didn't even seem like how she was presented previously. The previous two encounters she had with Hual didn't have that same feel to it. That situation, it seemed like she was more monstrous, like she was being controlled. So either like Darkhold pretended to be her, mind controlled her, we don't know. Because maybe he like pretended to be her, killed everyone, and then all of a sudden she just happens to be in the area and he lashes out towards her and tries to kill her in the process. I don't know. I think it was probably more so a mind control thing, maybe. Because there's another monster that could control people that basically made their eyes turn reddish like that. That's what I immediately was like, no, she's being controlled, right? But we just never circled to that, so I don't know. It'll probably still be a little while before we get full answers to that. Maybe next episode will. I don't know. But this episode also presents an interesting thing with Darkhold, in the sense that it's like, right, the wound on his chest, he's like in so much pain. It seems, and that's the question I had after last episode too. Is it that he's constantly in pain and he's just mitigating it, trying to pretend like he's okay? Or is it just anytime she gets hurt, it stays with him a while? Because I'm like, oh, it hasn't worn off? Because like, she's doing better, but it seems like, man, you still look like shit. You look like you're terrible. But it's like, maybe it's a byproduct of you know, the damage. I don't know. Because he does say that the wound won't heal. He did make a point that, now it probably is the former, that it's always painful, because I forgot a couple episodes back, he did say that it's constantly in the flux of hurt, like it's open wound that's constantly healing. It's open, heal, like all simultaneously, so it never properly closes. So it probably is a thing, if he's feeling pain all the time, he just mitigates it. He tries to like push it aside. But even at one point, his hand and his the person that's working with was like, oh, like what's happening with your hand? And he was like, oh, it looks like I'm aging. I've been holding it back too long. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, is there only a limit? Like, does he actually have a limited amount of time before he can't like kill Sung-gon once and for all? Or is it just a thing, like, is it that he held off feeding? Like, what was it that he was holding off necessarily? But not listening, Detective Kwan decides to continue investigating, and he's following Darkhold, even pulling up next to him. I'm like, that's not good. But when they do confront each other, like, he must know who Kwan is to all, because that's why he lets Kwan go later on. He's threatening him, but he lets him go because it's like, right, I need Hual on my side. If I kill his stepfather, I'm definitely not going to, especially because he's heard so much, especially from Duyeon, that they're hanging out and spending so much time together. It's like, right, I need him on my side. I need him not to forget that she's the monster who killed his family 600 years ago. But the whole point was to make him think he was going after some people, like the people with that food truck or fruit truck, and drew them in. And it's like, cool, I know exactly who you are, Detective Kwan. Let's have a talk. And so he says that he's not the one that killed that detective 15 years ago, because it's like, I actually had zero reason to do that. One, I told my men to stop her from investigating, not kill her. But even then, it's like, why would I also kill her either? Because the fact is that she could never have gotten me. Just like you can't do anything against me now, she couldn't have done anything then. I wouldn't have bothered killing her. That would have drawn too much. It would have just been completely unnecessary. So, I mean, it doesn't seem like you're always the most stable person, but it's like, yeah, he does seem calculated in what he does sometimes. He even says, like, right, he kills sometimes, but it's only because he kills out of a need. And he obviously references, like, right, I'm not the only Bulgasal. And that's why I'm like, I couldn't tell whether he was referencing Hual in that regard, or because he was talking more so, it seemed like he was more so referencing, like, right, the Bulgasal you might be talking about, well, the one who's still a Bulgasal, I guess, in his mind to her core, is Sangan, because she's still this monster if she ever gains back her memories. So that's what I'm so confused about, because obviously she wasn't a Bulgasal at that time. Well, because that was the 70s. So, or around that time. Yeah, so that might have been roughly around that time. Maybe she was still, like, in her previous life at that time. I don't know. But he's saying that he wasn't the one that killed her sister, but he was kind of saying, like, another Bulgasal did. And it's like, oh, who is it? And so it's like, oh, well, like, I just need Hual, so I'm going to let you go. And when the lady followed him, like, wait, are you just going to let him go? He's going to keep interfering. And Yote's kind of like, just let him go. Don't touch him. And then she proceeds to touch him. In fact, kidnap him, but she doesn't draw, she doesn't bring Sangan. I was like, oh, it's not even a trap for her. It's a trap for Hual, because she's like, she said that you're the true owner of the soul, and references her monster name. And it turns out she's, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't she the last monster Hual ended up killing? Like, originally? I think so. I think that was, like, the last monster he ended up killing. It's the one we saw him kill at the very beginning of the series. I'm like, that's you? Holy crap. I mean, to be fair, Darkhold has had a connection to all these different monsters that have been reincarnated. I just wasn't expecting that to be her. So it's like, and she brought up some interesting stuff. Oh, all those other monsters, they're too busy hunting Sangan because she has your soul. Like, I remember. I know the true owner of that soul is you. She's like, I was hoping, like, if you became human, it would have made it so much better, because that way I could definitely kill you. Because she was like, I can't kill you, not because I don't want to, not because Darkhold doesn't want me to. It's like, because I literally can't kill you, because killing a Bulgasal is impossible. But she does know weaknesses. I don't know whether that's because she spent enough time around Darkhold to know that. But at first I was like, are you talking about just on an emotional level, Hual's weakness for his father? But it seems like no, she was more so referencing, like, poison. Like, you need something that's actively killing them. Like, if it's something active like a poison, which is like your body, their healing factor, it's constantly going to be trying to fight against. That is what's going, like, just like the wound on it. It's an open wound that keeps, oh, it's open healing. It's just like the poison. Like, oh, the poison's attacking you, but your body's fighting back and healing against it. But it's kind of like a constant, like, tug of war in your body. Eventually, his healing factor will come out on top. That's why she just kept injecting. But it's like, oh, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to love it. Oh, it's going to be so awesome. And it slit his throat, which I knew that wasn't going to do anything. But obviously, Quan was, like, freaked out and scared. And so he was hoping, like, right, please don't kill him. But luckily, Duyan ended up calling up Iote, because he found out, like, oh, did you actually kidnap Detective Quan? And he was so upset with her, he ended up biting her. Sadly, it turns out she ended up running away afterwards, because she can't go back to working with Darkhold after betraying him like that. Because it's like, cool, you were only working with me long enough that you could get Hual. Even though I need Hual, you were so selfish and focusing on what you want instead of, like, no, this is supposed to be about what I want. Like, Hual, Darko had to know, right, what she was. And even knowing her connection, that maybe he didn't know that she remembered. Maybe that's the rub of it. We don't know. But I thought that was kind of an interesting development. Sadly, a new development to it all is that now Quan knows that Hual was a Bulgasal, and it's complicated because he's actually come to like the drinking together and stuff like that, opening up to him about some of everything, but not everything, made it so that he felt betrayed upon finding out Hual might be the Bulgasal that killed his sister. What we also found out is, first and foremost, their father was a serial killer. Like, he poisoned people back in the day. And you're like, wait, what? That's crazy. And then, but it's like, yeah, Bulgasal killed my dad, who was a serial killer, and then killed my sister. So now he's thinking Hual did it. And it's like, there's just so many questions surrounding that, you know? I mean, to be fair, Sangan thought the entire time it was going to be, because they made it, I figured it wasn't going to be him, the one that was responsible for Sangyeon's death and their mom's death. Like, I figured it wasn't going to be him, but it's like, well, we're only aware of 2 Bulgasals, so it's got to be one of them. I mean, Sangyeon was a former Bulgasal, but so there's a lot in that regard. Hopefully the next episode kind of gives us a lot of answers to that, but the shock of now learning this about Hual, he ran away because I don't think he knows how to really process it and deal with it. But, yeah, like, Darko was like, see, I want you to see that, like, I did you a favor. Like, I could have killed him, but I didn't. I'm on your side, so do me a favor and kill Sangyeon. Like, this will all be over. Like, you'll be better off kill. Remember, don't get too close to her. She's like, I'm not. Don't get close to this woman. He's like, I'm not getting close to her. He's like, don't forget, this is a woman 600 years ago that killed everyone you cared about. And even he said this interesting line where he was like, I remember. It was like, why would you remember? Were you there? Like, it seemed like he might have slipped up there. But Sangyeon shows up and she's like, no, it wasn't me. It was him who killed your family. And then Darko was like, don't listen to her. And Hual was like, what? And so he's caught between these two people, like, who am I supposed to believe in this? So I think Sangyeon's telling the truth, but the question is, why? Why was all that set up to be this way? Once again, what is Hual and, what is Sangyeon and Darko's history like? Why does he hate her so much? Why, once again, who was a Bulgasal first? Was he a Bulgasal first? Was she a Bulgasal first? Was she a normal? Like, what happened? That's going to be the key point of figuring out what's all going on here. So, I'm very, very interested to see where the next episode ultimately ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.